Hey everyone, it's Will here, along with Shane.
From Miscast Gaming, and we're here with another battle report.
We played Infernal Dwarves versus Dread Elves at 4,500 points just earlier in this week. Just practicing some test games with some new list designs. There's a few tournaments in our local area, and we got to get some games in. So we'll take a look at our army lists here. Played at 4,500, starting with my list in the Dread Elves. Just decided to try out a Wizard Master on a Dragon. Going with Monster Heavy and my basic core package. I love the Corsairs. You can take a look at the list here in detail. Go ahead and pause the video. I had Occultism. Spells I chose: Rot Within, Breath of Corruption, and the Grave Calls. Honestly, not really confident on my spell choices. I had my Hereditary along with that as well, Crippling Fatigue. I wasn't super happy with my lore and spell choices overall. I think I made a mistake there, but you've got to get the practice in to learn things like that. Let's take a look at your list, Shane.
Yeah, so I'm the Infernal Dwarves. Let's take a roll through this. This is my list, starting with characters and core. I've got a Fighter Lord, a Wizard Lord, an Accessory Wizard, and a BSB, so I am actually right at max character points. Following that, I've got a core that just is my standard mix of slave orcs and hobgoblins. One big unit of Citadel Guard, which is where I want to put my secondary characters, and one maximum sized 1,000-point unit of Immortals. This is basically the whole army. I just want to try and play an army that is all about Immortals for a few tournaments.
Yeah, it's crazy. 1,000 points. But man, that's a hard unit to shift.
And for my spells, my Wizard Master has Alchemy. He'll be taking the spells you see here. He's got two ranged damage spells and two buff spells. Glory of Gold was not a good choice in this matchup. I had dreams of casting it on secondary units and such. I probably should not have done that. My second wizard had Pyromancy, and he had Pyroclastic Flow as well as the Hereditary. Looking back, I would probably have given him two Pyromancy spells and my Alchemy wizard the Hereditary. But as Will said, we're just trying it out to learn the magic and learn how our armies work for some upcoming tournaments.
Yeah, so we rolled a random deployment, random mission. We got Dawn Assault with Breakthrough. So I felt like I had a pretty big advantage just based on the objective alone. It's going to be hard for Shane's army to get his slow dwarf scoring units, both of them, all two, into my deployment zone.
I have hobgoblins as well, but they're not a thing against Will. They just disappear. And yeah, as soon as I saw Breakthrough, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to try and play this as a tournament. I'm going to try and lose by the smallest amount possible.
Yeah, I thought I had a good advantage going in just based on that alone. We got map number 8, so you can see it there. Take a look at our deployment. Shane actually won the roll for deployment, and he opted to deploy his whole army in one go, choosing to take the second turn.
Yeah, with such short ranges, with no war machines, with 18-inch handguns and maximum 24-inch spells, I really thought that the best plan was actually just to give Will the first turn, and that way I can have the last round of magic, which is the most important to me. My deployment idea here was that I was going to try and stop Will from flanking around me and then sweep inwards towards the center. And if I could sweep inwards towards the center, there's some chance I could try and Pac-Man as much of his line as possible.
Yeah, your deployment in that flank there, I initially wasn't too worried about the positioning. I thought that I would outmaneuver you pretty easily. But to be honest, my army's going to do that pretty much no matter where you are on the board. So I kind of, on second thought, I liked your approach. I went ahead and deployed in such a way on the opposite flank. I wanted to get my monsters and my chariots right up there and eat his greenskins as fast as I could. Basically gobble up those points and then maybe put some pressure on the Immortals. Force them to spin in different directions if they want to protect their characters and keep casting spells.
The two bolt throws on the hill here give them just unequaled line of sight across the entire board. They will do real damage to me, and they're just outside of my ability to interact with.
Yeah, getting the hill in my deployment zone was certainly a big advantage. So here's what the board looked like after deployment. I've got my Dread Knights, my Medusa, and my Harpies right on the edge of my deployment zone. I want to get them behind that. Looks like a tower. It's a line of sight blocker, impassable terrain. I want to get them behind there. I want to stop the Kadims from coming around. They don't really want to take a charge from the Dread Knights. And the Medusa can still cast her spell. It's a hex, the Witchcraft one, Deceptive Glamour. She doesn't need a line of sight. So if she wants to debuff something from behind there, that'll be fine. And she can always sneak out to chaff later. Again, and with the Harpies, I want to hide them there until they need to fly out in front of the Immortals and chaff them, because they're not going to get too far. So I take top of turn 1. I unpack my army here, march everything forward as far as I can. I want to get those Corsairs up there, start firing at the Slave Orcs, and I just kind of position my spear units centrally. I want the smaller unit on the right-hand flank. I want it marching up into the Shane's deployment zone as soon as I can. I've got Cult Yema on my whole army, so my infantry is fast. March 12 and Strider. I've got no fear about going through those runes. And my dragon, I just want to keep her out of range of Silver Spike. I don't want to get shot with that on the first turn. So my magic's not going to be super effective, but hopefully Shane's won't be either. Just another shot of the positioning here, how I hid my guys behind that line of sight terrain on the left flank. Magic phase, I only get a 1. 4 dice, so I'm not really going to cast anything. I throw them at Breath of Corruption, it gets dispelled. I decide to store all my Veil tokens and carry them over for the next turn. I don't really have any spells in range anyways. I open fire with the Bolt Throwers, pick off a few Citadel Guard. Based on the angle, my Bolt Throwers are actually in their flank, which isn't covered by the forest, so he doesn't get cover there. Dealt some good damage. That's the end of turn 1 for the Dread Elves. So we'll take a look at Infernal Dwarf turn 1.
Alright, so here's my Kadims moving up. I'm thinking we can try and play some ring around the impassable terrain, and I can try and keep his knights from getting directly behind me in a turn or two. If I could just stall them off for a turn, I'm thinking my Immortals will be so far out of that area that I just won't be concerned anymore. I placed my Citadel Guard in the forest thinking I'd be able to get a lot of cover from them from the Bolt Throwers, and at this point I'm realizing I do not have the cover I thought, and I am not sure what to do with them. I should also say that my Immortals have my Overlord and my Alchemy Wizard in them, and my Citadel Guard have the Pyromancy Wizard and my BSB. The idea being there that even if my Immortals are engaged, my Pyromancy Wizard and my Handgunners can just wreak as much range damage as possible. From here, I'm moving my one Slave Orc unit directly forward. It's just going to be able to flee through the rest of my army as soon as it needs to, and then hopefully if it flees even next turn, it can come back by turn 4 or turn 5. My other Slave Orc unit out on the flank is probably just dead. And then I've got my Hobgoblins who are just, hobgoblin about.
Yeah, I like your idea of splitting the characters up. It definitely protects you from anything like a bad panic test, or, one unit getting gobbled up.
And it just keeps it so that even when my Immortals are in combat, I can just keep affecting the game at range, which is what I need to do to win. So here's just another angle of the movement here. And here's my magic phase. It's got spell card 6. Looks like I'm going to save 2 Veil tokens. And I'm going to start off with a Haze on this 1 unit of Corsairs.
With the Book of Arcane Mastery, your high rolls on the Haze really kept that spell resolving pretty much every turn. I couldn't really compete with it. Like, I had to beat a 12 to shut down a Haze. That's going to be all my dice, so it's just not going to happen.
And then from here, I just started throwing spells where I thought they were appropriate. A Silver Spike into the Chariot. I believe I could do this without pumping up the Silver Spike to the 36-inch range that I needed to get the dragon. So this was a lower cast value, so I went for it. And I'm just hoping to commit all of my blazes and my accessory damage to that Corsair unit. It's fairly central. If I can get it to panic, I can maybe cause more panic in Will's army.
Yeah, definitely a good plan. My list is vulnerable to panic. I have no Battle Standard Bearer, and I'm only Discipline 9. Here, the Silver Spike, I let it resolve. He rolls a 1 to wound.
It can't kill the Chariot anyways, so it's not a great danger to the Chariot. At worst, it'll take 2 wounds, and the Chariot's still extremely effective at 2 wounds at killing all of my light units.
Yeah, I wasn't overly concerned with that. But, lucked out. He rolled a 1 to wound, no problem.
That'll get a free blaze going off onto the Corsairs from my Icon of the Inferno, which will wipe out 2 of them. Rerolling wounds from the haze helps that a lot.
Yeah, I think with the haze and the blaze together, you killed a grand total of, it looks like 3.
Yeah. Not great, not terrible.
So I passed my panic, which was good. Jumping into my turn 2. I decide to take this charge with the Corsairs. They're on the flank of the Slave Orcs. I know they're going to flee, but I'm not going too far anyways, and I only need to roll a 6 to get them, because my advance 6. So it's not actually too far of a charge. I decide to go for it. And of course, he does flee. The Slave Orcs pop through the Citadel Guard and the Immortals, and they're all insignificant, so no panic to worry about there.
Exactly, and they'll still be within range next turn to rally from my general.
The rest of my army pretty much pushes up. I want to march as far forward as I can get. Turn 3, I want to be engaging with the majority of my elements. I want my Hydras fighting. I want my Corsairs fighting, all on turn 3. I keep the Harpies there behind the line of sight blocker and the Medusa as well. Kind of pivot her a little bit in case she wants to come out the other side. Like I said, she doesn't have a whole lot to do right now. She just doesn't want to get killed with blazes or handguns. And her bounce spell, could impact some combats. With the Knights, I just position them so that the Kadeems have a long charge if they want it. I don't think he wants it. And I plan on sweeping up that flank on the next turn. Just another shot of what the board looks like after I've marched up.
It looks like everything's pointed directly at those hobgoblins.
Yeah, well, that's where the Hydras are heading. So I get a big magic phase here. Lots of Veil tokens. I decide to go for the Crippling Fatigue on the Slave Orcs because I'm going to shoot my Corsairs. They're in short range. And I'm going to spit my Breath Weapon with my Hydra. So if I can reroll my failed wounds with the ranged attacks here, this will be pretty devastating. If the Orcs decide to charge my Corsairs, the stand and shoot, again, we'll still be rerolling failed wounds. So I expect to really hurt this unit. I roll high, and because they're Slave Orcs, I don't think it really bothered to dispel.
No, my initial thought here was that I should fight this because this is a chaff unit that's going to matter to me. But then after I considered it, even if you didn't have the reroll wounds, if you march forward and shoot me, and then I charge you and you shoot me, and then you fight me, in the best case scenario, I'm pretty sure I die that time. I die every time. This just means that you're not going to have to do one of those steps, probably.
That's right. I'm inclined to agree with you there. The rest of my magic wasn't super effective. I open fire with some bolt throwers and plink off another 2 Citadel Guard there. And it looks like another 2. So I killed 4 that turn. That's not too bad. The shooting into the Slave Orcs.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it went pretty well. 15 dead?
Yeah, 15
between the Breath
dead,
Weapon and the
dead.
hand bows.
Yeah. That's good. I consider it a personal victory that Hydra's already used up his Breath Weapon now. That's maybe worth the cost of that unit.
Pretty close. So here's what the board looks like at the end of turn 2 for the Dread Elves. The Slave Orcs don't panic. Nothing to worry about anyways. They're insignificant. But yeah, I'm coming up that flank. We'll jump over to Infernal Dwarf turn 2.
All right, so at the beginning of this turn, realizing that my Citadel Guard are just going to get destroyed standing there being hit by bolt throws, I'm not going to be able to use them for what I wanted to. So at this point, I decide that my new plan is going to be to jump all of my characters into the Immortals, where at least they're safe, and start advancing the Citadel Guard up behind my lines. Maybe I can just walk them up, do nothing else with them, and contest the objective. If I can just kill enough of Will's scoring units, maybe 1 unit in his zone is enough to tie him out on that. Other than that, my Slave Orcs on the bottom rally and turn around to get back into the fray, and my Hobgoblins, I don't know, stand there. Maybe they shoot, who knows. Here's another shot of the board and what's happening. I feel like I've stalled the Knights out enough. It's interesting that Will and I both feel like we're winning on the corner there by no one doing anything. I guess he's winning because he costs more points, but I just really don't want to get charged in the rear by those Knights. I feel like I've done enough at this point, and I start moving away to threaten the center. If he starts swinging back around, then we'll just play the game again, I guess.
Yeah, to touch again on that, I felt like I was doing fine holding the Kadeems there in place. They didn't really want to come forward, and the Knights are cheaper than them, so I felt okay with that. And with you throwing around that alchemical fire, making things flammable, I really don't want the Kadeems just bowling into my infantry or into a Hydra. That's just going to go bad for me. So I'd rather than be over there fighting with the 2+ armor save knights if it comes to that. So it was interesting that we both thought we were winning in that position.
Yeah. All right.
One of us has to be wrong.
It's probably me. So here's their magic phase. 5 and 9 is going to be a pretty good phase for me.
Yeah, you had some Veil tokens stored up too, so I think you had a 4 dice advantage.
Yes. So I'm going to start off with a haze. Once again, a good roll of an 8. Slightly higher than average turns into a 10, which is something that's just too high for Will to want to stop, because it'll mean he sacrifices basically the rest of his phase.
Yeah, and I just can't afford to do that. So I let the haze go off. He casts a silver spike, and I throw everything I can to dispel it. And yeah, so the silver spike doesn't resolve, but now comes the pyromancy.
So from there, I'm going to throw a pyroclastic flow, I believe, 2d6 shots into him. I need the extra range maybe, but regardless, I successfully managed to kill off a couple of the Corsairs who are very centrally located between both the Hydras and maybe also within range of your general.
Yep, they're taking a beating with the blazes, the pyroclastic flows, and with the haze trigger at the end, you actually wipe the whole unit out.
So to put that in perspective, I'm shooting the 2d6 shots at him, and then that will activate the blaze from the caster, which will also go with the blaze with the banner, and then the haze will burn off itself. So it's 2d6 plus 3d3 plus 1, and I'm rerolling all my failed wounds on it. So if I can start directing damage like that into units, I can do real damage to them. And I wipe this one out and cause a pile of panic checks.
Yeah, lucky for me, I don't fail any, and nobody decides to break the position there, because the Hydra's fleeing or panicking at that point would have been devastating. Top of 3, Hydras are going in. They're going to eat some slave orcs. It's mealtime.
It's always time to kill slave orcs.
So yeah, I declare a few charges. The Hydra into the slave orcs, they hold. I decided to send the chariot into. I really just want to get it out of the way. I want to open up that flank a little bit and get out of the arc of these immortals, because they're kind of coming at me Pac-Man style. I don't want to feed them. When the chariot decides to charge in, the slave orcs flee. So looks like I send the second Hydra at the hobgoblins. I think I needed a 10 to make it in. They passed their terror, and I made the charge. So I've got a failed charge with the green Hydra, the chariot, and the blue Hydra made his charge into the hobgoblins, though. So at that point, I realize I need to chaff those immortals, because I don't want them charging into the chariot and the Hydra, and I can position my dragon to get just out of the arc so that he can't charge me. Give me kind of a good position, too, where I can maybe threaten the Kadims, threaten the Citadel Guard, or if his Overlord moves off that flank, maybe get a flank charge on the Immortals. It's the decide to march the Dread Knights up the left flank too. The Medusa comes out of hiding now. There's no point in hiding anymore. The Citadel Guard are devastated. They're not shooting anything. Just another shot of the board to get an idea of what's going on here. So magic phase number 2. The only spell I get off is a Breath of Corruption. Everything else gets dispelled. I go ahead and fire that at the start of the shooting phase, and I get 1 immortal.
Worth every penny.
Every breath weapon that we fire in this game between the two of us, we roll 4 hits.
Yeah, almost every time we rolled 2d6, we rolled 4 hits.
That's right. The bolt throwers that can see open fire, and looks like I kill another 2 immortals. In combat, the Hydra kills a ton of goblins as per usual. I take a wound.
Yeah, I managed to spear a wound into you. I was pretty excited there.
Getting the revenge.
It's a moral victory. Also, since this Hydra's burned its breath weapon, it doesn't have the ability to wipe out more than 2 ranks of me, which means I get to try and be steadfast.
Yeah, and you hold.
I do indeed.
So we're jumping into the Infernal Dwarf turn 3.
So I don't want to charge my immortals into those harpies because I want this turn of magic. So I'm just going to charge my Kadim into them immediately. This will also let me slingshot my Kadim hopefully forward across the board, which gets me farther away from those knights who are coming up behind me.
Yeah, I made sure that the harpies were close enough that an overrun can't connect him with my chariots that are back there. But yeah, change position on the Kadims there could still be powerful. I have to hold, otherwise the Immortals will get frisky.
Now here's the slave orc unit I ran with initially that I was hoping would rally and come back into the game around turn 4 or 5. They're going to try and get these flank charge on the Hydra. They need that sweet 5 inches and get the double ones, which means that once again the Hobgoblins are doomed from the Hydra. But I was pretty happy that this was even a possibility.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part here is that the double ones means that you wheel yourself right into the forest.
Yes, so I will not be steadfast in the future, which no doubt will come back to bite me.
So here's what the board looks like after the movement phase. The Harpies are engaged. The Citadel Guard have kind of pushed themselves towards, so maybe they can draw a line of sight the Medusa. I think they had to march, so they're not shooting this turn.
Yeah, I've reformed the Immortals, I think out of line formation even. I've reformed the Immortals as much as I can and tried to march the Citadel Guard up. I'm just trying to get as close as I can towards the deployment zone to keep marching. I need to get around that terrain to hide from the knights. But I'm also trying to make sure that my left flank is what's exposed to that dragon. I can't find a way to keep those Citadel Guard from just being charged by that dragon and move them at all. So my thought here is, if my left flank is exposed to that dragon, and that dragon declares a charge, I will flee through the terrain and pop out all the way across the board. And from there, it's just a rally check and then a march through a hail of bolt throwers to claim an objective. And if that sounds like suicide to you, it is, but it's the best plan I can come up with currently.
Yeah, I mean, you got to play to your outs, and that's a good way to get a scoring unit into my deployment zone. Because otherwise, it doesn't really seem possible. They're not going to be able to march forward and contest with the spearmen, who will come to get in their way, or the bolt throwers. It'll just keep pummeling them.
All right. So here are my Immortals. I believe they're just marching forward here.
Yeah, well, the arrow I think is just to
facing.
show they're facing, because they reformed, and it was just a little bit confusing as to who was facing where.
It's just a mass of hats and axes. It doesn't really make any sense.
So magic, yeah, card number 3.
Yeah, 5 and 5. I've still generating a fair number of Veil tokens here. My ability to steal 1 from Will every turn is helping as well.
It sure is, and I haven't got my wizard in combat yet to use the Mork Sweeping to generate any Veil tokens, so my magic has been suffering, and you've had probably a 3 to 4 dice advantage on me every turn.
Yeah, which is great. I'm not used to that type of magic advantage. I definitely am not using it as well as maybe I should this game because I'm just getting used to it, but it still feels good. And I'm going to start that feel good moment with a Silver Spike into the General, which will go off. I'm not sure if you tried to dispel it and fail.
I'm not sure.
Regardless, it'll go off, it'll successfully wound, and then of course, since it wounds, it'll get 3 wounds.
Yeah, that's a big chunk.
I'll throw an alchemical fire down on either the Hydra or the Dragon.
I think it's on the Dragon.
On the Dragon, and I'm just going to keep trying to put damage in now.
I think I let the Silver Spike go off, and I dispelled the Pyroclastic Flow, which was going at maybe the Spearman, maybe one of the Spearman units.
That might be the case. Here are the Slave Orcs staring at this Hydra.
Yeah, the Hydra finished eating the rest of the goblins. They broke. I did not pursue. They ran off the board, so I just did my post-combat pivot there so I can go and eat some orcs next.
And here's my Kadims. They've defeated the Harpies. And now my Kadims are reforming to face the Dragon. They're in a bit of a strange formation there because I couldn't reform 3 wide and face that direction. Now my thoughts here are, if he charges with the Dragon at the Citadel Guard, I flee. If he redirects, he'll be either able to redirect into the Kadims or the Immortals. He doesn't want to redirect into the Immortals, so he can redirect into the Kadims. And with Alchemical Fire on him, I'm just hoping I can do any wounds to him at all by sacrificing the Kadims. Once again, not a great plan, but if I can just keep putting that wizard at risk, maybe something will work out.
Yeah, the Harpies got a wound on the Kadims, which was nice before they went down.
They're an embarrassment to me.
So here we are, top of turn 4. I decided to take the charge with the Dragon. I have to deal with those Citadel Guard, and I've got 3 wounds on me. I can't stay out in the open. The Silver Spike plus the Pyromancy spells are just going to wear me down. So I decide to go for the charge. Of course he flees. I expected that. runs through the impassable terrain. I think you rolled double sixes on your flee distance.
I went for it. I was going as fast as my stubby dice could carry me, and I left everyone that couldn't keep up behind in the dirt.
Yeah, only 4 of them died in the impassable, and they pop out the other side. So at this point, I can redirect into the Kadeems, I can redirect into the Immortals, or I can redirect into the Slave Orcs over there. If I redirect into the Slave Orcs, they're going to flee. And if they flee, then I'm stranded. I'm going to failed charge forward. Even a 6 is not going to get me out of the arc of the Immortals, and they're going to charge and finish me off. So I can't charge the Slave Orcs. It has to be the Kadeems. So it's risky. He rerolls his failed wounds on me because I'm flammable, and I got 3 wounds on me, so it's not looking great. But I have to take the best option here. And sometimes the best option sucks.
That's how I feel about my entire army.
So I decided to send this Hydra. He's the greenskin eating machine so far. He'll just go and eat some more orcs. At least I'll feel better about it. If the dragon's going to go in, I decide to send the spearmen in too, to the Kadeems there. They need a 10, so it's not that likely. But if they make it, that'll for sure keep my dragon alive.
Striking first before the Kadeems with those spearmen will just put on the wounds necessary to make sure I don't have enough attacks to threaten that dragon.
Yeah, and they've got the Academy banner too, so they'll ignore his armor save, only giving him an Aegis. And I still get a magic phase coming up. And I've used a lot of the weak phases, so I've got some good ones coming up, hopefully. I decided to send the Medusa in too. Looks like the dragon makes a charge, the spearmen fail, and the Medusa makes a charge. The Hydra succeeds his charge into those Slave Orcs too. The other one just moves at a line of sight of the Immortals. I kind of jockey my chariots over there. They haven't been super useful this game. I'm not sure exactly what to do with them. They can't fight the Immortals. They're immune to the impact hits.
Absorbing that first silver spike in place of the general is probably the best thing they could have done this game.
Yep.
They just exist in my mind as a threat, but also as something that Will can just use later in the game just as a chaff piece. He can just feed me a chariot to the Immortals, and that'll just prevent me another turn of killing something that matters.
Yeah, if I get the opportunity to engage the Immortals on 2 flanks, hopefully not the one with the Overlord, then I can maybe lock them down for a while. But the chariots never quite get that opportunity here. They were out of position in the mid-game and never able to capitalize on it.
I also see that your spears in the top left-hand corner have marched up into the corner of my scoring zone.
That's right. I'm thinking about my positioning, and I want to try and get behind that line-of-sight blocking piece up there. But it doesn't quite work out for me. I'm not quite able to get the positions that I want.
Since we have the refused flank deployment...
Yeah, the far end is actually not your deployment zone. Past that impassable terrain piece is not your deployment zone. So I actually have to be behind it or on this side of it anyways to score. That's turn 6 I need to be there. Right now it's only turn 4. So maybe I was a little too premature getting into that deployment zone. Just try a shot from the other side. Take a look at what the board looks like. Magic phase number 3. So it's not too bad. It should go pretty well for me. I cast Breath of Corruption, and you let that one go off.
Yeah, I absolutely do.
Then I cast the Rot Within, and I only throw 2 dice at it, and you decide to let that one go off too.
Yes, I really just want to stop the Crippling Fatigue. The other ones are bad, and I just felt like Crippling Fatigue was the one that was going to swing me to have no chance in this fight.
Yeah. Now, when I cast Crippling Fatigue, I throw my last 3 dice at it, and you can see the dice roll there. I got a 15. So that's a 16 with the Wizard Master. He needs a 17 to dispel me. You can see his dice throw to dispel. They didn't quite make it.
Yeah, which means that just by the dice roll and the swing of the Wizard Master and the Dread Elf rules, a low average roll on my 5 dice doesn't succeed. And that's basically exactly what I get.
Yeah, so I've got a really devastating magic phase. All 3 spells went off. I'm feeling pretty confident here against the Kadeems now. I don't think I have too much to worry about. In the shooting phase, my 2 bolt throwers that are in range here open fire, and I kill another 3 of the Citadel Guard. At this point, they are decimated.
Yes, and this is something I did not consider. I assumed when I ran through the dangerous terrain, I'd lose a couple of guys, I'd come out the other side, and then of course I'd just make my leadership 9 and stay. But I'm so used to using 10-man units that when I ran through with, when I ran through with a 9-man unit or came out with an 8-man unit or what have you, it didn't occur to me that I was almost a quarter dead. And then with a few more bolts from Will, I'm absolutely at the decimated mark, which means I'll be looking for a leadership 5 rally.
Yeah, so I'm fingers crossed here that he just keeps on running with those short little legs. We go to the combat phase. I spit my breath weapon, and I get 4 hits. It does no wounds.
Now the 4 on 2d6 strikes again.
Yep. I attack with the Sorceress. I attack with the Medusa.
I believe you successfully do 4 wounds, maybe?
I think I did a total of... I took 3 wounds. I killed 2 Kadeems. I think I did 7 wounds total. I killed 2 Kadeems and put another wound on them. Yeah, I did 7 wounds total. Because your agility 4 went at the same time as my dragon on the charge, and that's where I realized I made a crucial mistake. I cast the Rot Within thinking that the offensive skill buff was going to be relevant for my dragon, but in reality I should have cast the Deceptive Glamour off the Medusa, because that affects the agility as well. If the Kadeems had gone down to agility 3, then my dragon would be going first.
Yes.
And that means that I'd get my attacks and the breath weapon. Even though you got 2+ Aegis, I gotta throw it or I'm gonna die.
Every wound counts.
I would have got those before you attacked, which meant that I maybe wouldn't have taken as much damage as I did. Regardless, she's dead.
Yeah. As long as my Kadeem were alive in enough numbers to attack before the dragon, I had a chance to kill it, and that is exactly what happened.
So, with my charge in the rear and my wounds, only taking 3 wounds back, I win in combat by 7.
Which would bring me down to a leadership 3 test.
Yeah. And if he fails, then he'll take the 7 remaining wounds in the unit and it'll explode. He does not fail.
I do not fail. I, in fact, passed the rerollable 3. I reform my unit here, but then, of course, realized later I would have to test to reform, and they will go back to their previous position.
Yes. So the Hydra eats those slave orcs up there and runs them down. They're not steadfast because they're stuck in the woods. So here's what we look like the end of turn 4 for the Dread Elves. Dragon's dead. Sorceress is dead. No more magic. The Kadeems are still alive. I thought they'd be gone, and the Immortals are at full strength. At least the Citadel Guard are decimated. So that's not too bad. There's basically just the Immortals on the table. I might be able to clear up the Kadeems next turn. I've got those Dread Knights in position. We'll see how it goes. Infernal Dwarves turn 4.
Alright, so here we go for these decimated dwarves on a 5, and then they just decide that they are completely okay with everything that's happened, and they're going to turn to face those bolt throwers.
Yeah, and with their reformer on the center when they rally, it actually moves them out of range of my farther bolt thrower. So at this point, I only have 1 bolt thrower in range.
So from here, I'm going to move my Immortals around, and I am going to do that to jump out my Alchemy Wizard. So my Alchemy Wizard is going to try and jump out to the flank of the Dread Knights, where he has both the Molten Copper and the Silver Spike, and I'm thinking that I can just devastate the Dread Knights. And even if I don't kill them all, sitting out there in the open, I can probably finish them off in a future turn.
Yeah, jumping out of the unit like that, not a bad idea. You open up your arcs, because my bolt throwers at this point, they can't reach you from there.
And I'm in the forest, so that'll actually provide some cover this time. Other than that, this forest has been a giant letdown for
me. Your magic phase? Magic phase number 8. Another powerful one. I'm just getting whooped with magic here.
I think this is the turn where I actually come into this turn and have 14 Veil tokens.
That's right.
I have never had Veil tokens like that in my entire life of gaming before, so I don't even know what to do with them. But what I'm going to start doing is cast a Silver Spike.
Yeah, I have to let it resolve here. I know that he's going to be shooting at my Spearman unit that's up in the top of his deployment zone with all of his pyromancy spells. I need to stop those because I don't want to panic on a discipline 8. Like I said, I think I got in position a little too early there, and now it's a liability for me. So I have to let this Silver Spike go. Luckily, it only kills one knight.
Indeed. I will also throw a Word of Iron off on these Kadim. I was expecting the Kadim to be dead after fighting the dragon. Even after killing the dragon, I was still expecting them to be dead. Now that they're alive, I'm thinking I need to do everything I can to try and stack the math in their favor. They're very wounded, and they are going to get charged by those knights, so any little thing that helps might help them.
Yeah. So, with the Pyroclastic Flow, I failed to dispel it.
And I will roll 2d6 again and pull a solid 4 out.
Yeah, along with some blazes, and
both of my pyromancy spells I've played previously, I believe, were still within the 12-inch range to activate blazes.
That's right.
So at this point, I have thrown 4 blazes and the Pyroclastic Flow, which is 4d3 plus 2d6. The blazes have probably accounted for more than the actual spell.
Yep. Just good damage, though. Still tearing away at the Spearman.
The other thing I've done now is put Alchemical Fire onto the Dread Knights. Once again, that's just anything I can do to help the Kadim. I thought about trying to put it on the spears, but I thought if the spears were flammable, he just absolutely wouldn't charge with them and would charge with the knights instead. If the knights are flammable, maybe that gives me a chance.
Yeah, I agree. If you put the Alchemical Fire on the spears, they're not going to bother. But my spearmen up in the top, they passed their panic, which is nice. So right now I realize how bad of a position I'm in, and things are looking grim. We're going into, I guess the Medusa gets killed.
Oh, yes.
Surprise, surprise.
The other part of that is the Medusa dies.
She does not take down a Kadim, even though it's got 2 wounds on it. It doesn't finish it off.
Yeah, the only strength 4 of the Medusa really hurt her ability to damage me here. With Word of Iron, that meant I was still getting a 5+ armor and a 5+ Aegis from her attacks.
Yeah, even though I had the debuff on there and the crippling fatigue, just not able to sneak one through. So we're on top of turn 5 here. My Dread Knights decided to take this charge. It's in the rear. I got to go for it. I can't keep getting shot with magic. And I really want to wipe these guys out. They're worth a lot of points. I'm going to send the Spearmen in too. Everyone's got higher agility. I'll be going first. Gotta wipe these guys out. So they both make it. So I'm pretty confident that Kadim's here are toast. I decide that I need to get a backup scoring unit up there. It's turn 5. I march the Corsairs 12 as far as they can go. It doesn't look like I'm going to make it on turn 6, but I've got to get up there and try. I decide to move the Chariots up, and I figure maybe on my turn 6 I can use them to block line of sight to the Spearmen. So that's why they're kind of in a weird conga line over there. And I put the Hydra, the green one, so that he can spit his breath weapon at your wizard in the forest, and I can be just 1 inch away from your immortals to stop you from wheeling. The other blue Hydra there, he lines himself up just to try and widen his arc. If you try and get out of his arc, he still wants to get a charge on you. So the one bolt thrower that has range opens fire and kills 2. Enough for a panic test, but they pass.
Yeah, being back up to leadership 9 feels good.
So at this point, those guys are going to march into my deployment zone. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. He has to get just past the impassable terrain. I'm thinking that if I wipe out the Kadims, that my Spearmen can reform around the center, and then on my turn 6, I can march 12 and maybe body block them. So that's my current plan. Spit my breath weapon at this wizard in the forest, and I get 2 wounds on him.
Oh gosh. I believe he also got shot with some bolt throwers, but it is not a good day to be a 3-wound model in the woods.
Yeah, he's still alive though. I get some points for him anyways. I lose a few spearmen, lose a knight, but wipe the Kadims out. I reform like such. If I get the opportunity to march the knights 14, maybe I can get into the deployment zone too. I tried to get as many inches in that direction as I could. So here's the board at the end of my turn 5. We'll be going to the Infernal Dwarf turn 5.
So, I attempt a march check with my Wizard Master to try and swing him back into the Immortal unit, or at least get him out of line of sight with the Hydras, and he will fail that march check. meaning he is stranded in the woods. Knowing that's the situation, he is now abandoned, and the Immortals are just going to leave him living in the trees and get as close as they can to the Spearman unit to try and get every blaze and pyromancy spell I can possibly get off on them.
Yeah, I marched the Spearman as far away as I could, just to make sure you're not in range of the 3d6 missile, and that if you want to come at me, you've got to march. And that'll maybe open up a spot for my Corsairs to sneak in behind. I don't know if they'll have the range, but I can't go through you, so I need you out of my way.
I was feeling the lack of the triple march band or the band of the Relentless Company at this point. It's something I really like on the Immortals, especially when I get the last turn, because it lets them just project out so much farther than normal. The MR3, just, I've got so many points in that unit, I feel like I need the MR3 in it. And maybe Will's magic was a bit better. I would have got some use out of it.
So here's just a shot of the board here at the end of the movement phase. We go into magic, and you actually got card number 8.
Yes. And I will start a Molten Copper, which I have talked myself into taking this game against Will, specifically because the math is better on it versus the
Corsairs, that's
versus
it.
the Corsairs. The Corsairs. Oh, anyways, it was a terrible plan, but it was the spell I had. So I threw it out here and finished off the Knights.
Yeah, gets all 3 of them. So at this point, because all 3 died, my Spearmen have to take a panic test, which they promptly fail, and they run away. So this means that I'm not blocking those Citadel Guard. They're getting in my deployment zone. The objective's looking like a tie right now. You throw a big pyroclastic flow.
Yeah, I just throw 5 dice of pyroclastic flow. It's I think I've got a blaze off now because I've. Oh no, I apologize. I was not in range with my alchemy wizard
Yeah,
to
the alchemy
activate the
wizard.
blazes.
Yeah, he got left behind, so he's a little out of position there. But the pyroclastic flow goes off along with the blazes, the haze, wipes the whole Spearman unit out.
Yeah, even better than a failed panic check. Everyone dead.
That's right. So at this point, the chariots they conga lined up there, and they're like, well. There's no one left to protect.
I don't think they were in range of the panic from the unit being destroyed, or they passed. But regardless, they are okay with watching their friends being incinerated.
Yeah. Maybe they need some better armor on those guys. But here's the board. The end of turn 5 for the Infernal Dwarves. But top of turn 6. This is the last turn. I charge my Hydra into this Vizier, or this Wizard. He's got 1 wound left. I should be able to finish him off.
My wizard is actually facing the wrong direction, just in case a single knight survived. I still have my Toxic Breath weapon from the Mask of the Furnace, and I wanted to be sure that if Will tried to finish me with the knights, I could kill whoever was left.
Yeah, and a charge, if there was a single knight left, if I get a charge, and an overrun, that'll actually put me in his deployment zone.
Yeah, it was a very risky, very big risk that a single knight could take this objective from me.
So it ended up being a rear charge from the Hydra.
Yeah.
Not that it's really going to change much. The Spearmen rally, which is good. With some measuring and positioning, I realized the Corsairs can't reach the deployment zone, even with their 12-inch march. So they abandon that and try to make sure they are 6 inches away from the Spearmen and 6 inches away from the Hydra. I don't want anything panicking if he turns around and proceeds to wipe this unit out with his pyromancy as well. So I've only got 1 bolt thrower in range. I shoot. I kill one of these guys. He passes his panic again.
Everything is going according to plan. There's no reason to panic.
Yeah. In combat, I stomp down that little dwarf. He's mush in the woods now.
You actually stomp him down as well. The attacks somehow bounce off of that wizard, and I do 2 wounds with a Toxic Breath weapon and only die to the stomps.
Put in the minimum effort, just the amount
The
he needs.
minimum effort. Just walks over him
He's
without
tired.
noticing.
He's killed a lot of orcs and goblins. So here we are on the last turn.
So I've got that turn 6, that sweet turn 6. So I'm going to turn my immortals around now. And
Looks like the Pyromancy Wizard jumped out of your unit.
Oh yes. The Pyromancy Wizard jumped out of the unit to point himself at the Corsairs, to throw spells at the Corsairs. He also has the Dragon Staff. So I'm hoping I can jump out of that unit to. I'm hoping I can jump out of that unit to use the breath weapon on the Corsairs in case they survive the magic.
Oh, yeah.
But after I do this, I realize that with only 7 Corsairs in the unit, if I kill more than 3 in magic, the breath weapon won't be in range anyways.
So we finally get card number 1. Maybe a magic phase that won't be devastating here on the last turn.
Excellent, excellent. So from here, I'm going to throw Pyroclastic Flow. It's going to be 2d6 shots. I'll roll a sweet 4, and I'll kill 4 guys.
That's right.
I've also realized at this point, I've confused myself and pointed my Immortals the wrong way. They do not have line of sight to the Corsairs, which means that they are not able to use blazes to put additional wounds onto them.
Yeah, just a little bit of a mistake because you're used to playing with the different character loadout.
Yeah.
But the Corsairs promptly fail their panic test and flee. Luckily, there's nothing in range for them to panic, which is good.
I believe I threw the blazes actually on that one Hydra that has 3 wounds. If I just got crazy lucky and did 1 more wound, that would be enough, I believe, to
get points.
To get half points at it. It of course doesn't work out. The math on that's not in my favor, but it seemed like a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, definitely worth the attempt.
These are the Citadel Guard just marching. Just look at that sweet deployment zone march. Seconds after this photo was taken, they were no doubt killed in a rain of bolts, but as of right now, they're planting a flag.
They are scoring. Here we are looking at the end of the game. The Corsairs are fleeing, and they're still above 25%.
They're still above 25%.
So we tally up the victory points here, and you've actually got a lead by 390. Surprisingly close.
Yeah, my initial plan here was just to make sure I didn't lose at least 2 of my 3 expensive units, and instead I lost 2 of 3 expensive units. So that plan didn't work, but somehow...
the Citadel Guard survived.
The Citadel Guard did survive, I suppose. They are at half points.
Winning the secondary objective there, I really didn't expect to be losing the secondary. Regardless of what crazy things happened during that game. But wow. Flipped it to a 14-6 in favor of the Infernal Dwarves.
Yeah, which is just a ridiculous outcome in tournaments. If I get breakthrough with that army, I just expect I will lose the secondary, and I'm just going to try and play to tie it. I just want to play to keep everyone out of my zone, because this army just can't win the secondary unless incredible weirdness happens.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprising outcome at the end there. Not too bad, though, because I feel like a lot of that comes down to a few positional mistakes that ended up costing me that secondary objective.
And the dragon. In a played again, I'm sure you wouldn't lose that dragon.
Well, you never know.
Maybe I'll blaze it off the board.
That's right. It wants to get in there and fight stuff. I've got to commit it eventually. I pay points for that magic weapon. I pay points for those attacks. The dragon's got to do something. So here's the final score. Infernal Dwarf victory, 14-6. All right, thanks guys. Hope you enjoyed. Check back again soon. We'll get some more videos. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like or share it.
Yeah, feel free to subscribe to our channel. And this is Shane and Will at Miscast Gaming signing off.
Have a good one.